Hello Year 6 and welcome back to part 2 of our Picasso lesson. Now last week you all did your outlines for your Picasso piece using your planning grids, and this week we're going to think about starting to add colour. So last week we did our planning grid, we worked on proportions, and this week we're going to be adding colour as accurately as possible in order to reproduce the original image. So lots of you would have heard of a reproduction, a copy of the original image, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to reproduce or create a copy of the original image of a Picasso piece. Some of the words we're going to look at today, already looked at a few of them: reproduction, reproduce, planning grid, spoken about that already. We're going to carry out a study of a Picasso piece. We're going to make sure our proportions are accurate, we mentioned that already. We're going to observe the original image, and then the word predominant. Main or predominant, that's going to come up in conversation today. When I get to the point where I mention the word predominant, give me a thumbs up and I'll know that you've been listening. Okay, so last week we used pencil, and this week we're moving on to adding colour. When we're going to be adding colour, we need to look at the original image really carefully as we add our colour, and we're going to try and add our colour with accuracy and precision. And in order to do this, this is our star challenge for many of us, we're going to maybe have to blend colours to achieve the accurate colour matches. So this week you will be needing your image from the previous week, there's my image, some felt tips, or coloured pencils, or poster paint. You don't need all three of these materials or media, you need one. So if you decide to use poster paint, you're only using poster paint. If you decide to use felt tips, you're only using felt tips. And if you decide to use colouring pencils, you're only using colouring pencils. Now, put on your thinking caps. Can any of you remember at least one fact about Picasso from last week's lesson? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Can you remember any key facts about Picasso? If you can always jot them down. Any facts? Okay, I'm just going to go through a few of the facts about Picasso that we learned last week. If you mention any of these facts, big thumbs up to you. So his full name was Pablo Ruiz Picasso, and he was born in 1881, died in 1873. Spanish painter, did anybody say that? He's sculptor, printmaker, and ceramicist. Who remembers what a ceramicist is? I'm not going to tell you, think about what it is. He also co-founded the Cubist movement, and he started off by drawing very realistically, and then moved towards his abstract work, which led towards Cubism. So hopefully you remembered some of those facts. Now, as I said, today we're going to be adding colour, and I have broken this down in a step-by-step process. As much I've already completed the task myself, so you can see exactly how I did it, and hopefully this will help you to understand how I would like you to complete the task. So I used poster paint to complete the task. You don't need to use poster paint. As I said, you could use felt tip or pencil crowns. So my first step, which you can see in this first picture, is that I drew out the pencil lines. Once I did that, I had to rub out my planning grid. So if you haven't erased your planning grid, now is the time. So stop the video and erase that planning grid without erasing any of your sketch lines. Erase the planning grid. Super, now we're all ready to add colour. So when you're adding colour, you always look at the original image and start with the predominant colour. Oh my goodness, I saw some of you give me some thumbs up, so you have been listening. What does that word predominant colour mean? If you look at the image, predominant colour. Yes, I heard you right. It's the main colour, So the predominant colour in this image is blue, or tones of blue. So I'm going to start by adding all of my tones of blue. So I'm going to be a little bit of a colour detective, looking at the original image added all my tones of blue. Okay, working on the foreground first of all, adding all my tones of blue. Once you've added the predominant colour, then you can move on to adding other colours one at a time, especially when you're using paint. This saves you cleaning your brush constantly, which can often add to your paint becoming watery. So use that one colour, or when you're sharing pencil crayons, or when you're sharing colours, at least if you're busy with a yellow, somebody else could be busy with another colour. So I went and added my yellow into all the yellow areas. And I added my other colours one at a time. So I went and added my very dark, this is actually very dark green, and then I would do my background, and finally the last colour that you use is always black. You might have heard me saying that in year 5, I'm going to say it again in year 6. Leave the definition till last, leave the use of black till last. Put it away at the beginning of the lesson because you don't want you using it, you leave it until last. So we're just going to go through the other pictures that you may have chosen and talk about those steps again, thinking about predominant colour. Where are my pictures? There we go. So in this image, you need to decide on the predominant colour. Predominant colour in the foreground. This one's quite tricky because there's no, there's certain main predominant colours, but it's not too obvious. So you might decide to start with the orange, if that is your choice. You may have started with the blue. You may have started with the green. Okay, with this image you can see that that green is actually blended, mixed with a little bit of brown. So if you're going to do this really accurately and with great precision, you might want to blend a little bit of brown. I can even see some purple in that area. So starting with your main colours and then completing one colour at a time. So there's that green, this is the brown. So once you've done the green with the brown, you might want to come and do the brown area. Remember, complete one other colour at a time before moving on to the next colour. Then this image, predominant colour, I want you to be very careful here. Some of you might say to me, Miss, but the predominant colour is white. But in order to achieve that texture, you can't make it white. So, especially if you're not using paint. So I would suggest using greys and a light blue. You can even see tiny bits of orange just under the eye. Okay, so go for greys and deepen it with a few tones. So if you, yes, the predominant colour is this sort of grey shade, do those areas first and then start to work on your other areas. But don't use white. There's no point using white on a white page. Okay, so go for grey or light blue. Hope you're listening, hope you heard me, because I think some of you are going to have not heard that bit and you're going to try and say, oh no, that area is white. No, don't be lazy, I want to see that texture. Then this image is the exact same image that I drew, that I focused on. And as you know, the predominant colour was, yes, you're right, blue and tones of blue. Fabulous. So, once you've added all the colour and you have defined any areas that you wanted to define with black, I want you to come back to our checklist and have a look at your image, have it in front of you and go through the checklist. Did you study the original image? Have you tried to accurately colour match the colours to the original image? Have you added colour with precision, one colour at a time, using that main or predominant colour first? Have you thought about your rendering skills? Now, rendering, I haven't actually mentioned it. We worked on rendering a lot in year 5. When we're talking about rendering, I want to see you creating a smooth render, not lots of white gaps in between. And as you know, I always say go in one direction. So remember that, one direction, okay? I'll be really looking at your rendering skills. That was something that we really worked on in year 5, and I'm expecting you to be able to render in one direction. Some of you may have started to blend colours. We're very pleased to see that. Then, saying this again, repetition, so hopefully you are going to listen and take it in. When do we use black? At the end and with precision. Once you've done that, you can upload your work to Google Classroom. My star challenge for you today is just to try and do accurate colour matches, or make accurate colour matches to control your media. So if you are going to be rendering an area, that you actually control your pencil. You think about going in that one direction. You think about the pressure you're putting on your pencil. If you want the colour to be darker, you remember what I've taught you and you use layers to create those different tones. Also, another thing that I just want to remind you of. So if you make mistakes during your observation, try and incorporate them into your piece. Don't make them stand out like mistakes, but incorporate them so they look like they were meant to be there. Focus, don't rub or cross out, just try your best and have fun. So once again, just to remind you, you can use pencil, you can use felt tips are also great for blending with, or you can use paint. If you do use paint, you are responsible for all the tidying up. Brilliant. Have a good half term. Is it half term next week? The week after. So have a good half term, and I will see you after half term with some more art fun. In fact, I'm going to tell you what that is. Nearly forgot. So we will, after half term, we'll be looking at texture and looking at particularly the fur of a tiger and how we can create that texture. If you can, over half term, could you please make sure you have black paper or card and a white pencil, if that's possible. It's not a must-have. It will be great if you do. It'll be really good. Have fun, and I will see you soon. Look after yourselves.